What? What's good, YouTube? Welcome back. Today we're going to be getting into Mob Psycho 100 episode 5. Left off on a cliffhanger last time. I'm excited to see what happens between this matchup between Mob and Teru. Some psychic on psychic action, which we haven't seen quite yet. I mean, I guess kind of with Dimple-sama, but he was more so being possessed. So I think this will probably be a little bit different. I'm excited to see what the fighting and the action looks like with this. I'm expecting some pretty cool animation in this one. So if y'all have been following along, do me a favor, go ahead and click that subscribe button if you want to see more. Like the video if you guys enjoy this reaction. And yeah, I appreciate every one of you guys being here to watch. With that being said, let's go ahead and get right into it. Nah, the Body Improvement Club. A natural. Yeah. Dude. The hierarchy. Teru's psychic abilities look really cool, like the glowing gold. Let's go. Let's see some fighting. Ooh. Nani?
警戒してんな。気持ちもわからんではないがな。おそらく今までずっと小さな池の主として生きてきたんだ。自分の天敵になり得る存在に会うのは人生初。あのワイヤーアクションみたいな変な動きはなんだ？物を浮かせたりするやつ。お前はやらないのか？酔うからやらない。移動推進力による高速移動で近づけ。
Okay. Interesting. Mob's too strong, baby. Wholesome mob, man. This devil on his shoulder. So cool. Yeah, facts. It's a good lesson. Little mob is so cute. Is this Ritsu? Okay. It's Reagan, never mind.
喧嘩には使わない。それに僕は超能力に頼った生き方はしたくない。自分の中の他の魅力を探すんだ。筋トレだって始めたし。僕は変わるんだ。
Mob's got that body improvement. Ooh. Yeah, ow. Oh.
その他の魅力などクソの役にも立たないよ。そんなのは凡人にやらせとけ。僕の力の前には腕力も学力も法律すら無力だ。僕は特別な存在。この世界の中心なんだよ。
He's got the spotlight.
しょうがねえな。なあ、坊や。今回は引き分けで納得してくれねえか。あんな奴と引き分けなんて僕の人生の汚点になる。
Oh my gosh.
こっちとしても茂雄をここで壊されるわけにはいかねえんだわ。反撃の意志がないからこのままじゃ負ける。
He's not gonna lose.
困る。
ビクボ。
茂雄に霊力のほとんどを消されて今は残りかすみたいなもんだが、これでも埋もれたガキ一匹教育するぐらい。
A cocky little brat.
わけねえと思うぜ。
I don't know, you couldn't take Mob Bomb.
どうだ、てめえみたいな人間を相手にして
Yeah. Saw that coming.
エクボ。
僕の最高ウェーブで消し飛ばした。
Psycho wave.
かけらも残さず根元からね。
エクボが除名された。
Mom even cared about Dimple. Like, he's such a good little guy,
や
dude.
めちまえよ。それより超能力を磨け。
He looks back on
い
it.
いけ。
No.
お前の師匠入院させてやろうか。
Fucking Dimple saw him,
人
man.
気者にしてやるや。投資のやり方教えてほしいか。
Oh my gosh.
とスケベめ。旬でいいからさ、試しに体を乗っ取らせてくれねえか。
Just for a second.
エクボ。
He looks back on him fondly, even though he's a pest, man.
まあそうだろうな。元から何の意味もない存在だからな。それはお前も同じだかな。僕の前では所詮三流。小物でしかない。
お前は大物になるぜ。俺様が保証する。
こう言っておかないと勘違いするバカがいるんだ。こんな自分でも努力すれば何かになれるってね。
もっと自信を持てシゲオ。主役はお前だぜ。
Huh.
なんだよお前。その顔は。
Looks like Dimple-sama had an impression on
な
him.
んで小物とか凡人とかいちいち他人を下げないといけないのかな。
That's a good question.
いや、彼は意外といいやつだったのかもしれないと気づいただけ。あんたと比べてみて。
Yeah, right? Compared to Teru's using his power to just look down on everyone.
でも余裕面でいられると思うんだ。僕の超能力で屈服させてやる。出力最大。ノーブレーキで行くよ。
No break it!
お前だったら怪我しないっていうのか。
僕の力を甘く見てんじゃね
His voice actor sounds familiar too. Damn. Holy shit, dude. Getting crazy.
どうした守ってばかりか。
やめろって言ってるのに。
お前の力を見せてみろ。
Do you want to see Mob explode, bro? That's what's gonna end up happening.
少し趣向を変えようか。どこまで耐えられるか。耐久テストをしてやるよ。
Ooh. Holy shit, he looks crazy, dude.
家庭科室か。
Homek, man, what a class.
包丁は危ないよ。
Hey.
僕に指図するな。
Oh.
もちろん殺す気なんてないが、これで反撃する気になるだろう。
いい加減に事故が起きるってば。
Oh no, did he cut his hair off?
お前、わざとやる。
大事故が起きた。
Oh my gosh. Top of Teru's at 0%. God damn. That's funny.
謝っても許さねえからな。
Is he Nosuke's voice actor from Demon Slayer?
お前、今、より一層落ち武者っぽくなったとか思っただろう。
言ってない。
思ったんだな。いや、分かっている。認めよう。この集体、この事実。名前はなんて言うんだい。
Mobe.
影山茂雄。
影山。僕は花沢だ。花沢照樹。
花沢くん、どうもよろしく。
違うよ。
Oh my goodness.
敵として認めるんだ。そうすることで、より本気になれる。
もうやめようよ。
終わらせたければ打ち負かしてみろ。ほらほらほらどうした。大怪我するぞ。相手は
This is definitely a Nosuke man.
世界の主役。
全ては僕を中心に回ってるんだ。
God.
花沢照樹は選ばれた存在なんだ。
So self-absorbed. Holy crap.
なんでそこまで自分に自信が持てるの？
僕には超能力があるからだ。全てを支配する力だ。さあ攻撃してこい。力比べだ。
嫌だよ。
どうしてだ。僕がいいと言ってるんだぞ。
だって大怪我をさせたくない。
は面白い冗談だ。僕を凡人どもと一緒にするなよ。僕と奴らでは生物としてのレベルが違う。
超能
Yeah, I wonder
力
what-
が使えるくらいでそこまで。
なんだと。
あ、いや、 少し大げさかなって。
I wonder what their like power level difference is.
反論ができるのはだから邪魔なんだ。お前みたいなのは。
あれ、わかった。なんでそんなに僕に敵意を向けるのか。これは同族嫌悪だ。花沢君は僕に少し似てる。超能力を持ってるところじゃなくて、自分に全然自信がないところ。自分から超能力を取ったら何も残らない。
Yeah.
それに気づ
He's
くのが
put all his cards into that, all his eggs into that basket.
目立たなくて何の記憶も残せない脇役の。
Transition.
それが僕。花沢君の正体も僕と同じなんだ。超能力がないと何もできないってことを認めたくないんだと思う。
寝言を言うな。僕とお前じゃ何も。
You can see that struck a chord.
同じだよ。僕から見れば凡人だもの。
Ooh.
超能力がこもってない。
Damn, he looks savage now.
僕は何をしている。なぜこうなった。常にパーフェクトだった。
エル君また100点だったの。
力さえ使えば何もかも思い通りになった。
今のシュートすっげえ。
僕の世界よ。
クッキー作ったんでよかったら。
He hasn't even done anything to him. Just him being there has shattered his reality.
ぶち壊った。使え。超能力を使え。
Oh.
人に向けたら
Oh, he's gonna explode.
来るか。なんだよそれ。ここまで僕を否定する気は。なあ影山、筋トレを始めたと言っていたな。努力しても所詮その程度ということだ。人はそう簡単に変われないんだよ。諦めろ。超能力を使え。でないと僕はお前を
返してよ。僕たちのお年玉返してよ。小学生が調子こくなよ。殺すぞ。
いつ
てめえはと言ってる。
兄さん。
Shit.
兄さん。
変わる。
Oh, did he hurt his brother at one point?
僕は変わるんだ。おい影山、おい起きろよ。待て、僕を置いてくな。
影山茂雄と花沢照樹、超能力者同士の対決はついに決着がつかなかった。互いの拠り所を拒絶し合った結果、そこに勝者はなく虚無感のみが両者の胸に深く刻まれる結果となったかに思えた。
What?
なんだそれは。やっとやる気になったのか。それでいい。結局お前も信念を貫けないんだ。よし来た最大マイヤー。
Oh no. You can't keep up with Mob, bro.
使ったな影山。我慢できずに超能力を使いやがった。てめえも一人向けで使ってんじゃねえか。結局お前も。こいつ意識がないのか。じゃあなんだよこの力。
Yeah, I wouldn't call this necessarily Kageyama.
力が影山に吸い込まれて。
What?
大衆のエネルギーもこんな膨大な器を持っていたのか。
テルはそこに触れてはいけない何かを感じていた。異質、正体不明。
Oh.
嘘だろ。僕は何を目指す。
Yeah, for real, bro. What'd you do? The fucking rock.
もう十分だ。僕が悪かったよ。超能力はもう一人向けないから。ああ、僕って凡人だったんだな。
モブはすぐに悟った。自分は変わることができなかった。超能力で事故を起こしてしまった。感情をぶつける先が見つからない。矛盾をはらむ無力感に飲まれる。 どうしても自分に勝てないという悲しみ、それはモブの自らに対するささやかな抵抗である。
Interesting.
花沢君、服とかごめん。
待て影山、僕はもう喧嘩はどうなったんだ。
I forgot about everyone else.
あそこだ。
So much happened.
ギツなく処刑されてるぞ。あんな頭にされてたまるか。
Look how that happened to my hair.
見たろ影山、君の言った通りだ。僕たちから超能力を取ったら何も。影山君、
みんな、
おい影山、怪我はないのか。
僕は大丈夫ですけど。
よし、ならいい。今日はもう帰ってスクワットだ。
Can't skip leg day, baby. It's a cute little frog.
3時間ほど探したが、結局エクボは見つからない。
Aww. He misses his dimple sama.
兄さん、おかえり。風邪ひくよ。
ありがとう。
今日は遅かったね。ご飯は？
いいや、もう寝るよ。
なんか元気ないね。どうかした？何かあったら相談に乗るからね。
Aww.
リツ、あの時はごめんね。
あの時、兄さんが車に酔って僕のパーカーのフードに。
まあ、その時もごめん。超能力の事故の時、どうしても思い出せないんだ。あの時、僕はリツに何をしたんだろう。
ああ、高校生に絡まれた時のね。兄さんには何もされてないよ。不良が僕を突き飛ばして怪我をしただけさ。
Is he
兄さんは
lying?
僕を守ってくれたんだよ。いつまでも気にすることじゃない。おやすみ。
今日午後5時過ぎ、雷雨激しい町見市の空にて怪奇現象が起きたとの目撃情報が相次いでおります。上昇する瓦礫の中には人のようなものも見え、未だ被害者の特定及び安否が
あの時
リツ、
一部では人為的に起こされた超人。
あれは兄さんじゃなかった。
Ooh.
食欲がない。
風邪をひいた。
Wow. Action-packed episode. That was so much. Sorry, I didn't really say too much. I was just trying to take it all in. All right, everyone. Episode 5 of Mob Psycho 100. Man, what an episode. So much to talk about with that one. It's funny, you know, during the reaction, I feel like I wasn't really saying too much because there was just so much going on. Really full episode of you know, an interesting contrast between Mob and Teru. So let's go ahead and get into this. This episode was mostly centered around the battle between Mob and Teru, and we see off the bat that Mob is trying to not fight Teru with his psychic abilities, right? Trying to stick to those ideals that he has, that you shouldn't use psychic abilities on people. And we get a little bit of background on kind of who told him this. And, you know, we got this a little bit earlier that Reagan said this to him, but we get, I guess, the actual first time that Reagan said that you shouldn't be using psychic abilities against other people. And I think it was a pretty interesting, you know, little exposition by Reagan in that flashback, because he talks a lot about powers and talents that people have and making sure that you don't view one talent over another. So he compares it to, you know, someone being athletic or book smart or is a good talker or funny, right? And how that's no different than having a, you know, a natural talent and psychic abilities. Even though psychic abilities are more rare and they're really powerful, that doesn't mean that they're any better than any other talent. You know, every talent is its own strength in itself, right? So having, you know, being really book smart, even though that might not technically be as powerful as being a psychic, there's just as much use for that in different ways. And you really shouldn't be viewing or prioritizing talents one over another. And a lot of times having a balanced outlook on, you know, people's talents, whether that's in real life with like a workforce or, you know, with getting help for things. It's important to have a balanced approach of getting multiple different kinds of people with different skill sets, right? Trying to just invest heavily into just a skill set of, you know, really smart people or really good talkers. You know, you kind of need all of that in like a business, for example, right? You need somebody who's the people person, you need somebody who's the brains of the operation, kind of the business person, right? You need all those balanced approaches, and one talent isn't necessarily more important than the other. And Reagan says this, right? Like, it's okay to be confident in your abilities, but you can't get conceited. I think that was a really, really good line, and something that Mob has obviously taken in internally for himself and has used that kind of as his moral boundaries as a psychic. And we see the opposite from Teru, right? Teru is, on the other hand, is very, very confident in his abilities. He uses it to give himself, more confidence and to really become conceited and look down on others. He uses it to make himself confident, right? To give himself popularity and be good at other things by using his psychic abilities. And we can see through their fight here that it's kind of like a fight over their moral boundaries, right? Like, Teru's trying to make Mob use his psychic abilities to kind of prove to himself that, hey, you know, psychics are the best, I'm the best, I'm gonna show you that I'm stronger than you, I'm gonna make you use your psychic abilities to show you that your moral code here is wrong, that you really should be using your psychic ability to show your strength and confidence. But I really love the contrast between the two characters' moral codes here, and it really is the whole theme of this fight, because, you know, as soon as Mob ends up using some psychic abilities to defend himself against the knives, it shaves off Teru's hair and makes him bald, we really get to see what is deeper underneath Teru, right? And it's more so of one of insecurity, just like Mob. You know, Mob actually realizes this, is like, hey, I actually can see why you have so much animosity towards me. It's because we're really the same. You feel the same way as me. You feel empty without your psychic abilities. Your Mob's actually living through that, where he's kind of putting his psychic abilities aside and looking at himself outside of that. And he feels empty without it. Whereas Teru hasn't acknowledged that yet. He's leaning into his psychic abilities to build this facade of confidence, right? And the moment he gets his hair shaved off and Mob calls him out on this, that, you know, facade is broken, right? He comes back down to reality of, oh, I'm kind of nothing without, you know, my psychic abilities, and you can kind of see it. And I think this is something that we see a lot in real life too, right? Like, when someone has an insecurity, you know, you either own it or you try to cover it up in different defense mechanisms. I think Teru is a really good example of, you know, like a bully in school, right? Where bullies tend to lean into their power, their brawn, or focusing on others and belittling them to make themselves feel bigger, right? They kind of expand their egos, grow their egos as a necessary defense against what's really underneath, which is insecurity. You know, a lot of times people who hurt people the most are the people who are very hurt themselves. Not always that way, but a lot of times it is. And it's a defense mechanism for themselves to, you know, kind of try to overcome, or I guess hide that pain that's really underneath it all. But I really like the imagery of, you know, him getting his hair shaved off. You know, I think that was supposed to be kind of a comedic thing, but I also kind of viewed it as, hey, like, that's your facade being taken away as well, right? And I think that's something that some guys can relate to, where, you know, lots of guys go through balding as they get older, and it's something that ends up being kind of a source of insecurity for them, right? You know, if you're blessed with a good head of hair, good for you, but if not, you know, a lot of times guys have to kind of face that insecurity of like leaning into it and shaving it all off, or trying to manage it, right? It's drawn imagery for showing, like, once that's been taken away, once his hair has been taken away, you have to face that shame, right? You have to face what you've been covering up for so long. And I think it's a good representation of Teru's you know, kind of mindset with his psychic powers too. And it's really interesting because after, you know, his hair gets shaved off and Mob calls him out and being the same, we see that Teru actually tries to kind of like continue to resist this, right? He goes and tries to choke Mob without his psychic abilities, right? He's like, oh, I don't need to use my psychic abilities to beat you. I thought that was pretty interesting, that he was really, you know, trying to still prove to himself that, he doesn't need to use his psychic abilities, but Mob does, right? Still trying to have this war of their ideals here. And obviously, eventually Mob passes out, and we get this dialogue from the narrator saying that, their ideals kind of ended in a draw, so they were both left empty. But then Mob ends up exploding. I mean, it's interesting because his percentage wasn't at 100, but he still went into that form again, right? Where he seemed like completely unconscious this time, a little different than when he was fighting Dimple-sama a couple episodes again. This time, he didn't even reach 100%, and it showed 3 question marks for his percentage, I believe. And I thought that was really interesting because maybe it's not just completely connected to, reaching 100% emotions. We see afterwards, actually in the fallout, that's when he reached 100% and, experienced such sadness. There's definitely a little bit more to the, the percentage system and this entity that's within him that he transitions to, because it's not exactly the same thing that we saw with him facing Dimple-sama, and he is completely unconscious. And in Dimple-sama's case, he was conscious during that time, it seemed. And now we see an example of when he loses control, and it almost seems like he's even more powerful. And we even get that flashback to when him and Ritsu were jumped by some, I guess, high schoolers or something. And that might have been the first time that he lost consciousness and ended up hurting Ritsu as well. And something that was interesting from this kind of entity that came out of Mob was that it consumes energy from everything around it, including the psychic abilities of Teru. It started consuming it, and it's all too powerful, and ends up destroying the school and launching Teru into the atmosphere. Really, really interesting. And even in that case, we see that Mob is able to break down Teru's ideals around his psychic power, of him being the best, him being the star, expanding that ego, right? He still breaks it down by showing him, the difference between their psychic powers. Mob's goal this whole time was to not use it and to break down that, hey, you shouldn't be using your psychic abilities against people, and kind of, showing Teru those ideals from himself, right? But now that he's kind of backtracked on it since the identity took over, he still ends up showing him hey, your psychic abilities still aren't the end all be all, right? There's still gonna be people that are better than you with psychic abilities too. But I thought it was a really beautiful moment too when Mob, sees what's happened, and we see his absolute sadness that he has to experience. He feels so much sadness from not being able to control the contradiction within himself. And that contradiction might actually be more insidious than we've seen, right? It actually might be an entity, that's separate from Mob, right? His psychic, it's not just about his psychic powers, but maybe this person that he becomes, or whatever identity comes out of him when he explodes. And he's unable to control that, and he might hurt the people around him. And we see that a little bit too with his interaction with Ritsu at the end, where Ritsu asks him what happened, and Mob apologizes for for hurting him back then, and Ritsu says, "Oh, you didn't hurt me," and he lies and says that it was one of the high schoolers who kicked him. But then we get Ritsu by himself, and he's sweating and he's intense, and he acknowledges that it wasn't Mob that did that, it was something else, but it really was that entity that came out that did it. But he doesn't acknowledge that as Mob. He acknowledges that as a different entity. So we're getting a little bit more information. It's definitely super interesting to try to think about what that entity might be. Is Mob actually possessed by something? Is it more than just natural psychic abilities? I'm really curious to see what, as we get more information about all this, of what it actually is. But yeah, I'm a little sus of Ritsu, honestly. We've definitely been getting a little bit of some conflict within him. He definitely seems a little torn on how he actually feels about his brother Mob. And in general, he, in the interactions between the two, he seems very wholesome. He seems like a really good older brother. But then every time we get kind of more internal dialogue, there's some kind of animosity within him towards psychic abilities, and him not having them, and then this entity within Mob. There's definitely something that he's internalizing that he hasn't shown. So I'm starting to wonder if he's going to end up becoming more of an antagonist in this story as it goes along, or if it's just going to be a source of conflict between Mob and Ritsu. It's going to be really interesting to see how that pans out. One thing I did want to shout out to was right afterwards when you know, when Mob wakes up and Teru's down there, everyone's getting up from, you know, kind of passing out from the fight and everything. Teru's about to say, oh yeah, we're exactly the same. He's about to acknowledge, you know, admit defeat. And I think that would have probably hurt Mob more in that moment and made him feel even more sad. But the Body Improvement Club steps in right away. He's like, hey, Mob, are you hurt? And they're like, okay, good, let's just go back and do squats, right? Refocusing back towards the improvement side, because even though Mob wasn't able to, you know, overcome the contradiction within himself, you know, we kind of get this little bit of a side here, this moment with the Body Improvement Club that, you know, hey, it might take time to change, and Teru says that earlier in the episode, but that doesn't mean you can't keep moving forward with that. And I thought that was a really cool moment. I have a feeling that the Body Improvement Club and other characters in that realm are going to be a good, you know, influence on Mob to keep on helping him gain more control over that entity within himself, you know, maybe build the emptiness within himself so that he doesn't need to, you know, rely on his psychic abilities to feel confident. But yeah, I think that'll do it for this episode. I appreciate all y'all watching. Let me know what y'all thought in the comments down below. This was definitely a really interesting episode. I'd be curious to know what y'all thought about the kind of the dichotomy between, or the contrast between Mob and Teru in this episode. I thought it was really well done. So I'd be curious to see what y'all think in the comments down below. Like this video if you guys enjoyed it, and I'll catch y'all next time. Peace.